Hello everybody and welcome back to the Fortress of Solitude. Today we're going to be checking out Absolute Wonder Woman issue 2 by Kelly Thompson, Hayden Sherman and Jordi Belair. Diana's mission to Gateway City continues as the Wonder Woman's battle with the Harbinger Prime is covered by the news, revealing the warrior's presence to the entire world. Diana isn't too concerned with the reporters watching as she unleashes her lasso on the monster, scarring its face with the white-hot rope. Thompson runs Diana through her paces in this sequence and we get some really fantastic use of Wonder Woman's powers as well as some showcase of her new ones. When Harbinger Prime calls in the little Harbingers to attack Wonder Woman, Diana is able to cast a spell that unleashes a bright star construct, which burns the flying creatures and sends them into retreat. Artist Hayden Sherman's artwork for this issue is just fantastic. Again, like the first issue, it's all bathed in these great reds and really deep pinks and purples, just the colors of hell basically, and what have become the colors of this Wonder Woman and her costume. And I just love everything about the art that this guy does on this book. It has its own unique look to it that is very specific for this Wonder Woman, and I like that and really all of the Absolute books so far have had that, where the art has been very distinct, and it's none more so evident in this Wonder Woman book. Everything just looks fantastic and fits the character very well. I like his design for Wonder Woman, not just in costume but how he portrays her face with a very broad nose, and she's very tall and she has the olive skin. It's just works so damn well with the aesthetic that is going on in this book. On the writing side, I also really like that Diana can use magic during her battles, since it's not just a Wonder Woman who can just use combat training, a sword, a shield, her bracelets, her tiara. She can use magic now, and it gives the writers and the artists something else to work with that isn't just those things, and it leads to some really cool and dynamic action sequences like we see right here. With the creatures dealt with, Wonder Woman confronts Harbinger Prime again, and we get to learn a little bit about the lasso, which is called Nemesis and was forged by Circe out of the last remaining basilisk and infused with the blood of Prometheus and blessed by Demeter. Unlike the lasso of truth though, which reveals one's true self, Nemesis will burn a person trapped within its coils in proportion to their sins, and it's in that regard it's actually very similar to the lasso of truth, which will show a person's true nature, their truth basically, and that's exactly what this will do as well. It will show them their sins and kind of lay them all bare for them to witness, and I quite like that. I think that's like a cool inverse of the lasso of truth. It adds a new dynamic to it as well. I like the idea of like someone being judged in proportion to their sins, so the crook that she catches robbing your bank won't be judged the same as Harbinger Prime. It's very interesting. Diana ropes Harbinger around his neck and it begins to burn him, causing him to plead for release, and Diana will happily give it to him if he accepts Nemesis' judgment, leaves Earth and passes on the message to whoever summoned him that the world is under the protection of the Wonder Woman. Diana's deal is accepted and Harbinger Prime and his creatures promptly leave the realm, but Wonder Woman's battles are not over, as out of the debris of Gateway City comes Steve Trevor. Thompson hits us with a really interesting turn as Diana knows who Steve is, and this actually sets up a bulk of this issue, which is mostly a big flashback to see how the two met. You would assume that this would be their first meeting, since this is Diana kind of coming to man's world for the first time and kind of revealing herself, and you think it's going to be like that, but I like that they swerve here where they actually have a pre-established relationship. Echoing Diana's main continuity meeting of Steve, the military man ends up washing up on the island home of Circe and Diana in Hell, and after rescuing him from an unseen Hydra who tries to claim him, Diana tries to learn who this strange being is, having never actually seen a man until now, at least not a human man that is. Diana immediately feels responsible for Steve and asks Circe to help nurse him back to life. The first issue touched on Diana's compassion quite a fair bit and did it really well, and I love seeing it it put into action right here, with Diana immediately wanting to help this stranger no matter who he is and what he is. And I like that there's that idea where she doesn't think she deserves to be in hell, and maybe neither does Cersei, so maybe there is other people in hell that don't deserve to be there, and maybe Steve is one of them. This is actually touched upon later on in the issue, which we'll get to. Steve eventually regains consciousness, and Diana tries to carefully break the news to him that he is in hell. And I do love Steve processing all of this, since he realizes that to be in hell he would have to be dead, and what did he do to earn himself a place in hell? And it leaves him in this kind of existential crisis loop where he's trying to process all of this information, and Diana can't help but think that he has been sent there as a gift, maybe for her and Cersei, who knows, and she wants to find out what that is. And I like that she sees the good in even the most dire situation. She's a little bit of an optimist because she hasn't had any real world experiences, so she's kind of naive to a lot of things, and I like that that's one thing they've kind of kept from the classic Wonder Woman origin, where she's kind of sheltered until she goes out into the man's world and kind of sees what it's actually like. Steve gains composure and, like a real gentleman, thanks Cersei for taking him in and formally introduces himself as the Air Force pilot. Diana is visibly taken in by Steve since, as I said before, this is the first man she's ever seen, so she's having all of these feelings she's never felt before. The art very visibly signposts that with her blushing as she's talking with Steve, so she doesn't really know how to process all of this stuff. And during her and Steve's trip back to the beach where Steve washed up to, they begin sort of building their relationship with one another, setting out how they both see each other as something else. Steve comments on her height and how she's not really the normal height of a woman from his world, but he also isn't as well, because he's quite tall for a man from his world. So I like that there's this sort of connection there with how their heights are similar, and they're trying to sort of form a bond. It's like that awkward time in a relationship where you're just starting to sort of feel each other out and get to know each other a little bit more. Their talk turns to why Steve is there, and even he can't figure it out, thinking that he was a good man in life, so why is he in hell? He must have done something very bad. Diana thinks that not everyone there belongs there, and sometimes they are just where they are needed, and maybe that's why Steve is here. And that could be another thing related to her thinking that he is a gift from the gods, or a gift from a god. He's been sent down to sort of push her in the right direction. In the present, Steve and Diana reunite properly, with Diana visibly happy to see Steve again, but Steve is there on business though, and kind of ends their little happy reunion quite promptly as he reveals that his commanding officer, Commander Cole, wants to see Wonder Woman. Now, usually when Diana arrives in Man's World, they do play up the fish out of water trope. She's very naive about things, and we saw that earlier on in the issue where she, is kind of having feelings for Steve, and she doesn't really know what that is because she was never taught those sorts of things, so she's still learning that sort of stuff. But I like here, this is kind of subverted, as Diana was taught about Man's World by Cersei, and she knows all about it, and Cersei was sure to give her a sharp tongue and wit to combat those who would challenge her. Diana is also well aware that not everyone there on Earth is going to think that she is a hero or a friend, and it's a cool way to show the hero's humility and drive to help people, since hers isn't driven by any sort of glory or praise. She's just doing it because it's the right thing to do. Diana soon meets with Commander Cole, who screams at the hero for what she did in stopping Harbinger Prime, accusing her of turning up at a very convenient time to stop the creature, and even hinting that maybe he thinks that she created the creature or had a hand in bringing it to their world. Steve makes a comment earlier about how tall Diana is, and here we get to see it thanks to Hayden Sheridan's wonderful art. She just towers over Commander Cole and everyone in the room except for Steve, and as a fan of tall, strong women, I am all for that. I love how it looks, and I love how it's all framed with her just sort of leaning down looking at the man. It's great. Diana isn't too concerned with Cole's rantings, wanting to work with him and his people to prepare the world for what is coming. She makes it known though she will not be told what to do by him or made to conform to military rules or the military-industrial complex, and pretty much takes over the operation here, filling Steve and the others in on what's going on and how they'll need to evacuate a block of the city before Harbinger or whatever its boss is comes back. A timeline is established here as Diana believes that in 1 hour, whatever sent Harbinger will arrive, and it's giving them sort of a ticking clock element. Cole continues to scream and rant, but this time he does so as Steve for helping Diana, and I love what Thompson does here with Diana here sees the man that she has taken a liking to getting kind of picked on by a superior, getting yelled at and whatnot, and so she steps in quite literally to talk down to Cole for doing that, telling him to rethink his approach because they are there to actually help, not hinder his process like he thinks they are. Diana leaves to go and feed Pegasus, and Steve joins her and they bond over talking about the mythical winged horse, and Thompson lets loose a very sly hint about maybe how Steve got out of hell, implying that he was brought back to life with magic and sacrifice. And it makes me wonder, what if Cersei sacrificed herself to bring Steve back to life? Seeing how Diana looks at him and is enamored by him and taken by him, maybe this could be her final gift to her daughter to like kind of thrust her out into the world with Steve. It would be an interesting sort of dichotomy to, you know, Steve washing up on the island and then going with Diana back to man's world. It'd be like a really interesting opposite to that, and I'm intrigued to see what she has in store for Cersei because we haven't seen her in the present day stuff. It's always been flashback stuff. Diana also mentions she thinks other heroes will begin appearing soon to help the ill-equipped militaries of the world and just help save the world in general. And we've already been seeing that over in Absolute Superman and Batman as everything is just starting to emerge from this world, and I imagine once more of the books come in, the Flash and the Manhunter and the Green Lantern book, once they all sort of start to come in, I'm sure we'll start to see some sort of team up happening, or like a big threat that requires all of these heroes to gather together to fight against, and I'm sure that's coming very soon. Their talk is soon interrupted as Pegasus and soon Diana hears some piercing sounds throughout the city, and soon the sound reaches Steve's ear range, and him and the other soldiers are doubled over in pain by it as Diana confronts the Tetracide, literal death personified in her words. I love the design of the Tetracide here. It's a Lovecraft creature by way of Stephen King's The Mist, and its familiar yet strange and otherworldly shape really kind of unsettles me, and it's massive, it's absolutely huge, and I like how Hayden draws it as just this massive gargantuan monster that just this little Wonder Woman has to go and fight, and Diana tells Cole to evacuate the city, not a block like she said before, as she wanders into the ocean to confront the monstrous being. Absolute Wonder Woman issue 2 greatly expanded the story in more ways than I actually thought it would. I love how Thompson is blending classical Wonder Woman tropes with some interesting and refreshing new twists, like Steve and Diana's pre-established relationship in the comic. We're not seeing it in a formal timeline. It's kind of jumping around, and we're going back to see their relationship while picking up in the present where they already have that established relationship, and she's mixing it really well with some new pieces of character like Diana's use of magic in combat and just magic in general. I like the idea that she is more of a magic user in this universe. It makes for an interesting and dynamic set of powers that writers and artists can use in really cool action sequences, which we get to see throughout this entire issue. It all makes for a fantastic, engaging issue that leaves us with the promise of issue 3 being all-out action against the Tetracide. I'm going to give this issue a 10 out of 10.